I was talking about weaponization a moment ago and also virtue signaling earlier. There's a lot of stuff that calls itself conscious capitalism or impact investment or sustainable business or whatever that, is basically advertising something gamey-like that is never going to violate a fiduciary responsibility to do profit maximization or actually have any real consequentiality on its own advantage. And it's just basically taking a part of its marketing or talent retention budget to, appeal to millennials or to regulatory bodies or whatever it is. So are there things that companies can do? Are there things within market dynamics that would be good for the world? Totally. But are there a lot of things that are advertising that they are that aren't actually that? Also totally. So the discernment of anyone who's thinking about getting involved either as an investor or an employee or a whatever, like there has to be fairly close, thoughtful discernment. I was just talking to a guy the other day who had been at one of the top position at one of the major banks and is now in one of the South American countries that has part of the Amazon and is working on a approach to protect the Amazon and use market-based solutions to make the Amazon worth more alive than dead so that, market dynamics will keep it alive. And while that would be a nice thing to do, the particular strategy was like terrible everywhere because, it involved things like, well, the indigenous people who depend upon the environment there and protect it, if we can support their rights in some way, that'll end up supporting the Amazon. Therefore, we're making this fair trade, artisan craft business thing that the indigenous people will produce their stuff and will sell the shit out of it and be able to provide, economic benefit to those acres associated. I'm like, okay, so right now the indigenous people do like 1,000 things, and making just the amount of craft that they need to live is one of the things that they do. Now, as soon as you start providing economic advantage and survival to doing that one thing and not all the other things, and you just convert the indigenous people to a Chinese sweatshop where now everyone just does the artisan craft all of the time, and they try and bring in more people to do that thing. And like, if you want to know how to destroy an indigenous culture, figure out how to monetize one part of it heavily, independent of any kind of value on the other things. And this is where we talked about values that are extractable and exchangeable compared to things that are valuable but aren't extractable and exchangeable. So it's very important to really think through those strategies and say, is this going to be the right way to do it? And when you start to monetize one of the parts that is extractable and exchangeable and not all the other ones, and you confer a lot of advantage in doing that, then obviously you start to bias the entire culture towards doing that particular thing, and you start to lose key other parts. So it's not just that someone has to say, will this be net positive? And in a false dichotomy that says, well, if we don't do that, they're all burned and slaughtered. But you have to say, are there better strategies? So this is actually an important topic. The rationalist community has this, ongoing debate in certain areas on mistake theory versus conflict theory. Michael Vassar turned me on to this thinking. And there's this question of, do we do the dumb things because of mistake theory, meaning there was just no way we could have predicted that externality? It was just too hard. Or conflict theory, which was we didn't really try to predict the externality or the problem, or we even wanted to cause it. And while both are true, one of the things that we have to factor is that mistake theory ends up being a source of plausible deniability for conflict theory. So there are heaps of places where we are actually doing something that we know is going to cause harm. And whether it's P&G not fixing their things or the deep shore thing, not fixing its oil rigging or the whatever, like we know something's going to cause a problem. Or we don't know it is, but we didn't really try to do good safety analysis either because that would have been expensive. And then after the fact, we say there's no way we could have known. So we'll end up using complexity and mistake theory as a source of plausible deniability for being assholes. And so we have to be very careful not to do that. So oftentimes we'll look at a strategy and make a very false comparison and say, well, either we do this or don't do this. And if we don't do it, great tragedy. So we straw man all the other possibilities to then support why ours is utilitarian the best, as opposed to really try to think, are there better strategies? And probably there are much better strategies, but maybe they take more thinking and don't provide as much immediate capitalization for me. So again, there is no answer other than really deep earnestness of what you actually care about.